greetings.
We're now live on Facebook.
All
yeah,
right.
nice stuff, bro.
Yes, thank you. We've got some noise in the background. I'm not sure. It might be someone who's, let me see. Let me see who that might be. Might be somebody driving and the wind. They need to mute. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Brother Michael. That's all right. Okay, we are now live and direct. And I would like to welcome everyone on. So I'm saying again, welcome brothers and sisters. This is the Woodson Banneker Jackson Bay Division, number 330, UNIA-ACL RC2020. It's our September 2021 forum, Freedom Friday Forum. And today's subject matter is the Garifuna, or when you're speaking of everyone, the Garinagu. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Okay. Yes.
Yes, you are. Garifuna is singular and Garinagu is plural. That's the collective community.
Right. Well, we want to welcome the collective community, Garinagu. So this is a wonderful occasion for us to get to know who the Garifuna is or the Garinagu is, because we don't hear a lot about those folks. And we have on, first, let me introduce Pablo Blanco. And let me just not go that far yet. I'm skipping things here. Let me tell you what we're going to do in essence. And that is our program is, first we'll open with the preamble of the UNIA-ACL Constitution. Then we'll get into introducing the main presenters. Then we'll have our discussion, and that discussion will be like family discussion, sitting down, speaking to each other, and getting to know each other better. So first, let me do as is normal in the UNIA. We do have in the UNIA, we open our meetings with a ritual of some sort. It might be the preamble, might be the pledge to the flag, it might be a prayer. But for our purposes in the forum, we open with the preamble. So let me read it to you. The Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League is a social, friendly, humanitarian, charitable, educational, institutional, constructive, and expansive society, and is founded by persons desiring to the utmost to work for the general uplift of the Negro peoples of the world. And the members pledge themselves to do all in their power to conserve the rights of their noble race and to respect the rights of all mankind, believing always in the brotherhood of man and the fatherhood of God. The motto of the organization is one God, one aim, one destiny. Therefore, let justice be done to all mankind, realizing that if the strong oppresses the weak, confusion and discontent will ever mark the path of man, but with love, faith, and charity towards all, the reign of peace and plenty will be heralded into the world, and the generations of men shall be called blessed. That's the preamble. And of course, it also in a nutshell describes who we are in the UNIA-ACL. I think that's appropriate for us, because a lot of people who may be hearing this for the first time, and it's good to introduce, because you know, the UNIA-ACL still needs to get out to every person of the Negro race, so to speak, the African, to understand what it's all about. And so the UNIA-ACL is continuing what Marcus Garvey, the founder, and the ancestors who with him, you know, created the Constitution and the preamble, working together to put that message out there to our folks, that we can, as a people, come together, united and with self-reliance, and to be a force to be reckoned with as a people. All right, so after that introduction there with the UNIA, I will also say welcome again to everyone, to the Garifuna, to everyone else, Africans everywhere, and to other people who might be watching, or who will be watching, because we have this being on Facebook, and so live, and so, you know, if you're watching on Facebook, welcome. And we'll also we may upload this to YouTube at some point, and to those of you who will be watching on YouTube, welcome, and peace and love to you. I will now bring forward those presenters who are on at the moment, Brother Michael Flores and Brother Pablo Blanco. So I'm you know, I'm always reluctant to be the one to present some person's bio or bio. So you know, I would like to hear that from you yourself. But you know, since you know, I mean, let me first introduce some of what I've got for you, and then if there's anything you need to add to that, you can do so, because I know you're more than what we have here on paper. All right. First, Brother Michael.
Yo, greetings.
Yes.
You know, I consider myself simply as an African revolutionary, you know, right. And basically that's it. The nuances of that, that's the Garifuna. But I'm an African revolutionary, and I see myself as such. I don't more. We believe in the unification of Africa. We believe in the unity of the continent, the unity of the diaspora peoples with the continent. The people I follow trends along the way. Such a folk in Nkrumah, right? We believe in the All African People's Revolutionary Army. Again, of course, Sajafo was a student of Marcus Garvey and other Africans in the diaspora. His whole concept of African unification actually came through his experiences with other Africans in the diaspora as he was making his way through life in the United States. So basically, we subscribe to the same thing. We work every day. We study. We lend support to African movements and African unification movements. When there aren't any, we build and create one. That's the bottom line of an African revolutionary, is that when there's no revolution, you make one. The Garifuna issue, though, Pablo.
Okay.
I would, you know, within our community, and of course, Pablo understands the Garifuna nationalists and the Pan-Africanists.
Mm.
And those little lines that are drawn there in the understanding of difference between one of the Garifuna nationalist peoples and a Pan-Africanist person who has been, again, working on a much broader scale, a higher level of African unification than just my tribal unification. No?
Mm.
But again, after saying that, I would ask Pablo to elaborate a little bit, because I would think that he has been, over the years, a Garifuna nationalist, evolving into a Pan-Africanist, or has evolved into a Pan-Africanist. And here we are. So I would ask him to shed a little light on the Garifuna nationalism part. No?
Yeah.
So I appreciate the compliment, Brother Michael. Seremeni boom with the guyon with the Rama you gunda in the name where yati da bigibiri. Ibiti yano ibiti kate lo wayeno ani wama wo. So as per Brother Michael, I just greeted him in Garifuna, by the way, to everyone. Before I answer the question and respond to Brother Michael, I would like to go back a bit and let us talk about the history, because I think Garifuna history is very comprehensive and dynamic in the Caribbean. You know, and I'm looking at, I say that because I'm looking at our DNA. We have a Garinagu DNA and Ancestry group on Facebook, and our DNA for the Garifuna community has high percentages of DNA from Cameroon, some from Nigeria, a high percentage from Congo, Togo, Benin, Ivory Coast, and I've seen some Garifuna persons with DNA from Angola. So, Brother Congo and Baba Mosey, Garifuna people were created from African explorers that arrived in the Caribbean in the 1300s. There's three versions of that story. The popular versions of that story, rather. One is the intermarriage of the African explorers with Amerindian women, which we call now the Ignatius or the Arawak. That was around the 900s and the 1200s. The second narrative of the story is the shipwreck of a Spanish and Dutch vessel off the coast of St. Vincent in 1635 or 1675. We don't know that yet. We're still investigating these things. So from that particular shipwreck, the escaped captives, the enslaved Africans, they intermarried with the indigenous woman in the 1700s. And that's the third story, which is kind of gray, you know, this shipwreck narrative. So we're still investigating that in the community as well. So in the context of Pan-Africanism, I think for my research, and Michael, I do a lot of research. When I was at the Sorbonne, or close to the Sorbonne in Paris, I picked up this book, Histoire et Civilisation de la Caraïbe, Story of the Caribbean Civilization. This is in French. Currently learning French. I'm teaching myself French now. I picked up other books too. Black Arab Kingship and Ritual, Women and the Ancestors by Virginia Kearns. I've been reading this book. Then I revisit certain books like by Brother Ivan Van Sertima, which Baba Nosy, I know you're from Guyana. He's one of the people that I study as well, along with Walter Ronnie. They came before Columbus by Ivan Van Sertima. I still have my copy here. I revisit this book a lot. And I read what's going on in the Caribbean. This is British Historians and the West Indies by Dr. Eric Williams. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, to make a strong case, I forgot one more book. Victor Hughes, he was the person that facilitated arms to the Garifuna people of St. Vincent through Marin Pedre, who was a Garifuna man from St. Lucia. He formed a relationship with Victor Hawes. Victor Hawes is known for colonizing Guadeloupe, Martinique, and French Guyana in South America. So after reviewing these books, I could make the argument that Garifuna people or Garinago as a collective were Pan-Africanists before the term was even created.
Pablo, after reading
these books, a very
can I throw something in there?
Argument.
Oh, but Pablo, Brother Michael was just asking you a question.
No, I wanted to. When I talk to scholars and those people that try to or are in the process of interpreting Garifuna history, I have to stand back a lot of times and look at the methods that they use to do their research and the scholars they use for references. One of the scholars that has done extensive research in the Caribbean, not necessarily about Garifunas, but about Caribbean people, has been C.L.R. James, one scholar who I respect, whose methods I also respect and I agree with. He wrote a book called The Black Jacobins. I didn't hear you mention that one. And if you look at what C.L.R. James said in The Black Jacobins about the origins of the Black Caribs, as he called them at that time, and you look at the history of France and the history that evolved around St. Vincent, then you would understand without any prejudice whatsoever that C.L.R. James is correct in his assertion, which he said, that the French developed laws, which they did not only in St. Vincent, but in North America as well, to quarter people to the best of their ability, maroons, octoroons, 1/5 of this, 1/4 of that, 1/2 of the other. In St. Vincent, they came up with a law that specified that if a Carib woman had a child with an African, then the child would be a free person. Those were laws. If your research, that did happen, that those French did create those laws. C.L.R. James asserted that one of these same peoples born of a Carib woman being put into slavery against the French law that he was 1/2 Carib and 1/2 African, took the French to court in St. Vincent and won his case and got his freedom. And from then, the genesis, the genesis of Garifuna Dwo started there. There is even a history of the Black Caribs and their knowledge of law, their persistence for legal activity, their hunger for education, even within that time, making deals with church preachers and whatnot to educate their children under different circumstances. All the other history assertions about slave ships crushing and this and that, I've never really paid any attention to. I've always looked at what C.L.R. James said as the genesis of the Garifuna beginnings. However, a few years ago, I went to Mali, and in this circle that I was moving, it was well known that I was a Garifuna from Central America. I went to a museum there and was called by the curator. He said to me, "There is your Garifuna ship." He showed me a ship there in Mali, in Bamako, in a museum there. a replica of a ship that was sent by King Abubakar with technicians and scientists and highly skilled people to come into the Caribbean and Central America. So again, I am looking at maybe the genesis of free people moving around in the Caribbean, meeting people with different free African peoples, that is, with different history, and that have evolved maybe with the mixings of Central America. Like personally, I don't really take those mixings as a big thing. It's a part of nature. Like when I was in Honduras, Pablo, I have cousins in a place called Shangri-La. The Waika, which is the mosquito, they live right there next with them. They intermarry and intermix and all of that. But African genes, being what they are, will absorb all those little differences and come out in such a way that is unquestionably African. Now, I say that history has to be revisited where the Garifuna is concerned. We have bought into the studies of too many scholars whose study is not in our interest. Like that woman, Nancy Kern. Of course, she was granted some documentation by American academia and whatnot to do her little work and what, but I would throw that away in the garbage. I would throw that away in the garbage and meditate more on the assertions of C.L.R. James. Okay. His interest was to inform his people. Kern's interest was to get a PhD studying people she thought were unique that had never been taught. Easy, what do you call that? Easy thesis, so to speak. Move around innocent people and they patronize you and they do what you want. Make your work easy. I've seen it here lots of time in Central America. People come to search for their degrees and using us to acquire those degrees. To our naivety, we don't even know what they're doing.
Well, from what you just said, Brother Michael, it seems that the stories or putting together the history is still a work in progress.
Yes, it is still a work in progress.
There's no one true form of what it is. So, but let me, Brother Pablo, I don't think you were finishing what you were saying. So let me go back to you, so have you complete what you were.
Yes. So before Mike interjected, I was going to say that we have new data now in which we could interpret our history as well. We have a brother, his name is Andoni Perez Castillo. He's in the University of Southampton, I believe, in England. He has a book out, Insurrectional Resistance of the Garifuna Revolution, The Chosen Ones of Urume. In that book, he talks about a little bit of what Mike is talking about in regards to the language. He looks at the history from a Garifuna perspective, and he uses our language to do that, along with references from our cosmology and other components. So in this book, Andoni, Dr. Perez says, he lists actually Bambara, Soninke, and Malinka words that have the same meaning in Garifuna, in our language. So we know that those languages are spoken in West Africa, in Sierra Leone, in the Gambia, and Mali. So this connection with Mali is very strong. And actually, when I listen to Garifuna ancestral music.
And the Malian music. Yeah. And Umau Sangare, Baba Mal, and the whole kitload of Malian musicians. You can feel the spirit of your Garifuna in their music, man. That alone should let you know where you come from. I don't know what else to say. I was listening just now to the Wanaragua you were playing.
I I don't, Brother Pablo, I don't think you say you're disputing that, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm
Yeah,
not
okay.
I'm just
So,
adding
yeah.
context.
Yeah.
I'm just
okay.
adding context, you know, because I like to, you know, I have an information technology background, so I'm used to analyzing data and synthesizing it and extracting what is useful to me, right? So I look at things from a very analytical perspective. I like to look at, because around me right now, I have all types, I have books, you know? So I'm reading the books and I'm looking at the culture that I'm experiencing currently. And I'm doing a compare and contrast to what is true, what is not, what is, you know, verifiable, and what is it, you know? So our history is very dynamic. As you hear with Michael, I mean, it's one perspective, which I'm not disagreeing with. The African component is there, but this culture, this indigenous Caribbean culture is very strong in Garifuna, in the Garifuna community. The language itself, the Igneri and the Kalina, those are the core languages in the Garifuna community, in addition to the French and some Spanish words and English words as well. So we are a very, very unique community, very interesting community, more than we seem to think that we are. You know, and I'm just fascinated by all this.
You know, Pablo, I had a friend that came to the area here doing a course region from the United States called African Cultural Continuities in Central America. African Cultural Continuities in Central America and the Caribbean region. Now, as we were saying, we understand clearly that our blood has been fused by our experiences in the region. But what is it that we want out of that? Is it like, do we want to subscribe to the notion of separation, or 1/5 Mesquita, 2/5 Indian, 2/3, whatever, 1% African? You understand it? What is it that we want out of that? We have to have an identity that revolves around the totality of who we are. Yes, of course. But what is it that we want? I mean, I am satisfied knowing that I am a Black person. I am an African person, and my legacy is African. And to me, the rest of the minor stuff, which is the 1/5 Indian, the 2/5 this, the 3/5 that, that's not really significant in my identity. You know, for some people, yeah, it matters. So what we end up happening, what we have Garifunas who are interested in African cultural continuities, and then we have another sector that's interested in Indian cultural continuities in the Garifuna. So, but what do we get out of that? Whereas right now, I hear some Garifunas, and you might have heard them speaking of building a Garifuna nation. I have long we understood in our revolutionary movement, building of any nation revolves around a land base. Where is that land base going to be? We sit around, sometimes we talk about your roommate this and your roommate that. You cannot go to St. Vincent without a passport and a visa. We have to understand that. Wherever we are, we're residents and citizens of the host countries where we live. This is your roommate. You cannot go there without a passport and a visa today. You cannot go and say to the St. Vincent, I'm a Garifuna refugee. I want to come back home and this and that. They will throw you in jail or in the crazy house. And here we sit in foreign countries talking about a national homeland that we have the notion, the desires. Where do people, migrant Africans, coming through an experience that revolves around colonialism with the European and the slave situation, talk about a national homeland unless it's Africa?
Let me jump in there a little bit. Most people don't know the history or the existence of Garifuna. So for the new people who don't know, I think we need to go back and start like, okay, Garifuna have a history that started in St. Vincent, and how did they get to Central America? How they treated in Central America? One thing that Peter Scott said, once you're black, you're African. Okay.
If you understand the Geechee, the history of the Geechee peoples in North America,
the Gullah people.
If you understand the history of the Maroons in the Caribbean and Jamaica, then you will understand the evolution and the history of the Garifuna within the same context of those histories of Maroons and Geechees and escaped slaves and peoples in Canada that were led by Rosa, by Harriet Tubman, and these other communities that were running away and trying to do their best to escape European colonialism and slavery, and doing what they had to do to protect their isolated communities as well, including for Garifunas and Maroons in Jamaica, making treaties with those very same slave bastards to return to them slaves that escaped from their farms. Ultimately, in the end, taking a bad rap as slave catchers themselves, to return them back to the slave, because that had to be done to protect the freedoms that they had fought so hard to have in these communities where they live. The Maroons take the same rap in Jamaica. I have listened to Jamaicans say to them, oh yeah, y'all caught the slaves and took them back to the slave master. They had contracts that dealt with that with the British. But again, they defended their fortresses with all they had with their life so that they could maintain their freedoms. This is what happened same way with the Garifuna. Okay, the Garifuna wants to now specialize their history and make it so unique that it's apart from the rest of the colonial histories that was in the region. And that is not correct. It's the same. It's the exact same. The free flow of slaves into those refugee communities and whatnot, incorporating them eventually as soldiers, and they marrying eventually into it's the same thing. There was nothing unique, about the escaped slave communities and people trying to live in freedom. It is the same.
Okay, Brother Michael.
Brother Michael, you are learning, and quite a few of us are learning. But most people do not know the Gullah people in North and South America. Most people don't know about anything about Garifuna, and most people don't know about the Maroons, all the different Maroons that took place throughout the Western world. So therefore, what I'm trying to do is, like, in this program, what I'd like to do is, first of all, introduce the people to what a Garifuna is, what their history, what their struggles are, and go from there. Not separating. Okay. But the thing is, we all have unique. Everybody have their own history. The history of the Garifuna in Guatemala is a little bit different from the one in Honduras, from this one in Nicaragua, and also in the United States.
It's all connected. We cannot separate. They're all connected. The history of the Garifuna in Guatemala is connected to the history of the Garifuna in Honduras. The history of the Garifuna in Belize connected same way to the history of the Garifuna in Nicaragua.
Yeah, but the struggles of Black people in New York is the same, but it's not the same in Mississippi or New Orleans. It's the same, but it's not the same.
All right. Let me, Brother Pablo, you've been very patient and quiet, and you look studious the way you look. But anyway, let me let you continue, because but first let me ask you, did you read C.L.R. James's book, The Black Jacobin?
I haven't gotten a chance to read it. I did not get a chance to read it. But it is on my list of reading books.
Okay.
Baba Mosi, have you had a chance to read it?
Oh yeah, I've read it. I mean,
so what I was saying about the assertion of C.L.R. James in reference to the genesis of the movement of the Black Carib in those islands, you have already read those informations as well.
Yeah, yes, okay, understood.
Okay.
Understood.
Yeah, okay,
but as Rabbi Congo was saying, what essentially we're trying to do though is familiarize the folks who have no idea of what Garifuna is or have very little knowledge of the folks and their history or culture. Because of course you said it may be an African-centered culture, and there may be those who within the Garifuna community may feel that differently. They may feel that their culture is really centered with the indigenous people from that they met, Africans met in the Caribbean or Central America. Those are differences that probably, let's say, we're in the wash, will sooner or later come out to what is really true, because it's still a work in progress.
Brother Pablo, Baba Mosi, I'll tell you a little story about one of my uncles, right? He named Aston Flores, right? He was the head of this National Garifuna Council here in Belize, right? One day he broke down in front of my farm, you know? So I picked him up, gave him a ride to take him home. I said, you know, I never get a chance, an opportunity to talk to this guy. Let me engage and see what he could tell me about what I want to know in reference to his position. So we're driving, going to Dangriga, and I asked him, here this kind of reasoning. Uncle Acid, I asked him, how is it that you got to the position of indigenous peoples in the NGC? And if I thought, he looked at me, man, cold. He said, you know, the United Nations is not giving any money for Africans. They're giving money for indigenous peoples. If we go and tell them we're Africans here in Belize, we won't get any of that money. This is what my uncle told me.
Okay.
Now you understand.
Well, I know I will. It's possible that there's some of that, but you know, let me go back, Brother Pablo. Let me go back to you so that you can, you know, and Brother Michael, let's let him finish what he wants to relate to us. Then we can have a further discussion. Okay, Brother Pablo. Brother Michael, could you mute? Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. All right. Pablo.
So, yes, I wanted to, you know, educate the audience on the Garifuna culture, the history. Our language is a major determinant in our history, and the preservation of it and the conservation of it. So I have here on my lap the Garifuna books that I've collected. The People's Garifuna Dictionary by Roy Cayetano. This is a Garifuna dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
We have Garaudia. Garaudia means book in Garifuna language. It's a Garifuna trilingual dictionary by Mr. Ruben Reyes. We have here Learn Garifuna Now, Aprenda Garifuna Ahora. Frende ba Garifuna Gunyon Le. This is a another trilingual dictionary by Luz Solis. So, you know, I understand that well, here's the thing. You know, I like to get technical.
Mm.
We're all African. I think the whole world is African because we know that the Sand people, the first existence of life, if we go into genetics, is in Africa. So the entire world is African. But there's different groups within Africans that migrated. For us, it's been the group from Mali, Mansa Musa Abu Bakari, who came to the Western Hemisphere through their ingenuity and technology and intermarried with the indigenous Caribbean people. And that's how we came about. So we have this language that we work so hard to preserve And these are only 3 books. I haven't shown you the books by Professor Salvador Suazo from Honduras, who wrote 13 books in the Garifuna language, in which he touches different components of Garifuna culture, from the spirituality, from the grammar and text of writing Garifuna language, to other components within the Garifuna world that he studiously put in text for us. Those books need to be translated from Garifuna to English and Spanish. We're in the process of doing that. So my point is this, you know, we do have a shared experience that's similar to the Maroons. That's similar to the Gullah Geechee of the Carolinas and Georgia and the Eastern Seaboard here in America. And that common denominator is the fight, the unifying fight of white superiority, white supremacy. We have that in common with all these groups. You know, that's why we have organizations like the UNIA. The idea was brilliant by the Honorable Marcus Garvey to unite all Africans to be one, to trade with each other, to do commerce with each other, and to look and to have like a worldview of Africa. That was brilliant. You know, what I'm saying is that the Garifuna people on the island of St. Vincent was a sovereign country, and they were autonomous to that region prior to European colonization, going back into the 1300s. So the reason that we were displaced as a collective was our strong willingness to fight for our land and our freedom. And that's another commonality that we have with the Gullah Geechee and the Maroons of the Caribbean. We have a book by, I believe, Brother Senghor. We have Sister Lisa Aubrey from Arizona State University that wrote In Search of Bimbia. And that book shows the different ports. Well, the port of Bimbia, they were enslaved Africans that was taken from that region into the Caribbean and again into the Americas. There was 5 ships that were disembarked in St. Vincent. So that gives us a clue to why we have St. Vincent only second to Brazil as a large, as a very different ethnic groups in the Caribbean. St. Vincent has that designation second to Brazil. So when you look at Garifuna people, you can see through our phenotype that we come from different ethnic groups from West Africa. We have Garifuna people that are very dark. We have some that are light. We have some that have Michael's features, that's very African, and we have some that have indigenous Caribbean features. And this is due to the admixture in the Caribbean with the indigenous people there. So I just want to make that clear to the audience. Again, our experience is very similar to all Africans worldwide, which is this fight against white superiority or racism or white supremacy. So in that fight, Garifuna people signed 2 treaties. They resisted white supremacy for 30 years in the 1700s at St. Vincent. We landed in Honduras because of that resistance. In 1797, I could trace my family lineage to the 3 siblings that landed in Honduras: Juan, Sebastian, and Silvia Ariola. They landed to Punta Gorda, Honduras on April 12, 1797. So our history is not the same as the other African groups. It's not. We have a unique history, and I think we should celebrate it. And all of the diaspora should know about it. Because again, like Brother Congo alluded to, the African-American experience here in America is vastly different from other groups. Like the Gullah Geechee, from my understanding, and you guys could correct me, the Gullah Geechee, they were the ones that initiated the freedom of the slaves through the Gullah Geechee Wars on the East Coast of America. If it wasn't for the Gullah Geechee, African Americans wouldn't have freedom in this country. So even though we're Black, we just have different resistance levels. I just like to highlight my Garifuna resistance level. And I like to tell everyone that during the slave trade, Garifuna people were millionaires. We had Garifuna chiefs that were millionaires in St. Vincent. While the British were trafficking enslaved Africans. Some of those enslaved Africans, they became Maroons. They became runaway people, captive people. Garifuna society absorbed them and they became Garifuna. So when we talk about Pan-Africanism, how can the Garifuna experience not be included in that conversation? Because we saw our African brothers and sisters that were suffering this experience, we welcomed them. And within Garifuna society, there is a Uraga or story that says that when the chief, our paramount chief, Satuye, was in St. Vincent, he made a declaration to the entire Caribbean that said that if you want to be free men and women, you come to Urume, also known as St. Vincent. And he did this because Urume was the headquarters for the Garifuna warriors. So once enslaved Africans in Grenada, Barbados, St. Lucia made it to St. Vincent, they were free Black men and women. So again, Pan-Africanism, the Garifuna people have been practicing Pan-Africanism since the term was coined, I believe. And I think I make a strong case on that.
Two points, my young brother. Very good dialogue. We have to pay attention to King Jaja, that was also in St. Vincent, and also connect Hannibal Island off the coast of Florida. Very good dialogue. I had to interject here, Professor Baba Mosley.
Can I get in there?
Mosley, you have.
Go right ahead, Brother Michael.
Okay. From my perspective as a Pan-Africanist in the world, okay, today, the Garifuna people, African people, are catching hell all over the world. The Garifuna people are no different in the hell that they are catching than any other African people anywhere in the world. Here in Belize, I will speak for Belize. We are at the bottom of the economic ladder. We are the most exploited people in this country. We are the most backward people in this country. We talk of education, but we're not educated to liberation, to our own liberation. In Honduras, our people are catching hell there. No different than African people anywhere else in the world. They're exploited. The Europeans are taking their land. They are killing them. They're doing to them what the colonizer did back in the day. Wantonly, they take their land from them. And they are powerless to do anything about it. Now, we can't really be going off tripping here, thinking we're all this, that, all of that, when in essence, we fall in line along with the rest of the African world. Anywhere you go in the United States, they're shooting our brothers down in the street, the police, same process. Anywhere that you go, the African peoples of the world are catching hell. And it's no different amongst the Garifuna people in Honduras, Guatemala, or Belize. You go there, I have been there. We are at the bottom of the ladder. We're downtrodden there. We're highly colonized and don't even understand it. We move around with a serious colonial mentality and don't even understand it. We're victims and we don't even understand. This is what's happening here, right? There's no dream. And this, I walk out of my door into Hopkins Village. There's some nice buildings there, but our youth are catching hell, right? Our people are catching hell. The education system is burning us down. I say they were educating slaves. It is real. While we sit down and want to think that we're a great this and great that, no, we're not. We're a bunch of colonized citizens. As a matter of fact, some of us, we go to America, we're looking for economic refugee business, and we don't want to say the reason why we left is because we were repressed and oppressed where we are. It's happening. Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize. Garifuna peoples are catching hell, no different from the rest of the African world. I want the people to know that today, somebody might be dying in Honduras, some European wanting to take their land, killing them and throwing them into jail, setting them up and doing injustice to them. That today here in Belize, the same thing is going on in my village. Somebody comes with more money, talks to a poor African person that have never seen money in that way. Before you know it, he has traded his land for a few dollars, and tomorrow he's hungry and poor and he has been taken advantage of. There's nobody there to defend them. Pablo, in New York, I go to the homes of Garifuna people, Jesus Christ, white men were posted on crosses all over in their homes, lit it with candles and all of this, and you cannot tell them, how are you praying to your enemy? How you worship these people? This is our reality. This is our reality, man. There's something wrong with us as a people, taking all this suffering and can't even see and understand what is it that has been done to us. Hence, we do need Pan-African protection. We need like maybe a foreign government, a Malian government, some African government right now to hail Honduras and tell them, stop killing those people, they're my people, right? To hail the Belizean government and tell them, those black people are my people, stop using them that way, or we'll send an army there for you. That is why I'm saying African unity, Pan-Africanism, Black Power, the whole 9 yards is needed to protect us as a people, wherever we may be. Right now, I need an African umbrella, my brother, not a Garifuna umbrella. Garifuna people are helpless to even help themselves. I am angry because of the advantage I have seen taken. I don't live, maybe my life is blessed in one way. But no, it is not another way. For see all the suffering of my people and live amongst them as well. You understand? It's not easy. We used to say about armchair revolutionaries and them kind of people. That's why I left the United States. I never wanted to be seen as no armchair revolutionary. I want to be in the field, in the front line, doing something to change the conditions of my people. And that is needed right here, right now, amongst them Garifuna people. I am telling you, we are the most backwardest people in Central America, bro. Go to Honduras, you see. Any Spanish there rise over us in 2 days. Go to Guatemala, you will see. We live on the bottom of Spanish feet. Come to Belize, you see. Yeah, Creole politicians and the rest of them stamping us all over and putting us in jail whenever they feel like it, arbitrarily. We're in hell.
All right, Brother Michael. All right, please. You have a noise in the background. That's why I've asked you to mute. Now, it's a question for you, Brother Michael. Are you saying to us that the Garifuna should have a priority of establishing themselves as Africans in the diaspora, to be united with Africans, and to have the matter of culture and identity as Garifuna to be marginal, so to speak? Brother Michael.
Yes, my brother, in the matrix of African cultures, what we do is marginal. As a matter of fact, when you start about research, my brother, I look at this Jan Kunu, and you go into West Africa and you see Jan Kunu dancing in a different way, but the same way. And you understand the connectivity and the relativity of culture. Yes, as we say that the ship came from one area, dropping people off in different areas. Well, why should I sit down and say that where it dropped me off is more special than where it dropped you off? When in essence, it shouldn't have dropped us off at all. It shouldn't have taken us at all. So what's special about this slave land and your versus your slave land? Man, Brother Pablo, let me explain something. I used to think to see these things amongst Garifuna, cultural realities. I would be in a family from Honduras. I grew up in New York, of course you know that. I would be in a Honduran family in New York. They know that I'm a Garifuna from Belize. And in a little minute there, they start speaking in Spanish to isolate me from the situation. I would never argue about stuff like that, but those are the little nuances that I look at how people separate themselves from other people. Now, how could I draw some tangible discussion and find some solutions for my situation, our condition, with someone who wants to speak Spanish, you know, and keep me out deliberately? And knowing that we could all communicate in the Garifuna language now, but that doesn't occur, where we say, let us make Garifuna the primary language of our communication. Like for instance, right now, you and I, we could sit here and we could discuss this whole situation in the Garifuna, but we would need an interpreter so that other brothers can understand.
All right. Yes. You know, I think what you just, Brother Michael, mute, please.
Okay.
Yeah, you've got a feedback that, yeah, it's kind of disturbing. Okay. I think what you said is quite significant regarding some of the differences, and you know, we have that throughout the African world, I would think. I mean, you know, even on the African continent, you know, we've got these issues of differences, tribes and languages, and you know, somebody would let's say, even for Nigerians, they would speak in their language, figuring that the other person doesn't understand, or even they may pick up some things and they'll understand, well, you know, this person is isolating me. And they have that, they still have those issues on the continent. So I you know, it's understandable that some people, you know, they if they speak in Spanish, they don't want you to understand what they're saying. They may be saying, you know, this is a handsome man. Or, was it women? They may be saying, this is a handsome guy here, man. You know, blah, blah, blah. I mean, yeah, but, you know, you never know. But in any case, it's an issue. And I agree with that. Because when you speak about how you're suffering in the in Central America, recently I saw with what's happening in the borders of Texas right now. With there are several Garifuna there. Some of them are even wearing the Garifuna colors, and you see them crossing. They, you know, or jumping off something or the other, trying to get over something. And I've seen several of them wearing the Garifuna colors with the shirts they're wearing. So I'm saying you've got Garifuna in that group of people as refugees trying to cross into the United States. And that, to me, if they're going to go through that kind of hell to get here, it tells me that what you're saying is of high significance regarding how people are being treated in Central America. I'll go back to Brother Pablo for his comments.
I think Brother Michael made a point in regards to our current state, our current social state in these countries. Mm-hmm. But we gotta also ask ourselves, how did it become that way? Why did we have to migrate to America to get a life of dignity and humanity, so to speak? or to develop ourselves. Why did we have to migrate? Why couldn't my folks stay in Honduras and become part of the economy there? The same goes to brothers and sisters in Guatemala, Belize, Nicaragua. Nicaragua, by the way, is the safest place to be a Garifuna person right now because they have autonomy. But I want to focus on the economic component. Economy is the way that we use time and energy, right? But in using that time and energy, first of all, we have the land. We have collective communal land. We have the labor with our people. However, we don't have the capital to develop the land or to monetize it. We weren't allowed to engage in the educational system in Honduras until the 1950s. My grandfather, he came to America in 1954 when my mother was born. He attended Harlem High School over here. You know, the onus was basically to help his family, bring his family over here, and at the same time, help build Santa Rosa de Aguan in Honduras. So there's a level of education that we don't have. And that's what's affecting us now in these territories. Belize is a different dynamic altogether. I believe it was the churches that educated or facilitated the education of the population of Belize. And most of the educators in Belize were Garifuna. They were the one that went into the remote areas to teach the population of Belize. But, you know, again, there's the economic component there. How come we don't see people from Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize? I think that's what Michael was alluding to. Why do we live in communities that don't have basic needs like healthcare,
electricity,
shelter, you know, electricity, running water, roads? We have to ask that question. Why? Because here in America, when I went out on a solidarity caravan in 2014, I passed by places in Mississippi in which they didn't have running water. And I saw places in Texas close to the border that they didn't have running water, electricity, or any of those amenities too. And this is in America. So when we talk about development, we got to talk about it from a communal way, because Garifuna people, like traditional African people, we think in a communal sense, not in an individual sense. So something within us, or historically, we were destructive because we had that template back in St. Vincent. Once we got to Central America, it's like we had to start all over. Around the time that we got there in 1797, there was so much turmoil in the region at the time. 40 plus years, 21, that's when Honduras got its independence. And we played a role in that. We had a general, well, he was a soldier of Francisco Morazan, who was the George Washington of Central America. He had a Garifuna soldier, John Bull Bulnes, they call him Walumugu in Garifuna. He played a role in the liberation of Honduras from Spain. So due to that experience, a lot of Garifuna people got land on the Caribbean coast of Honduras. And that's how we began populating those coastlines. But yet again, Honduras, the dynamics of Honduras history is very complicated as well. I mean, you know, the population of the Black people there is under 5%. The Garifuna population now is about around 2%. And then we have the Creole population who have a background from Cayman Islands, Jamaica, and some of them from the Bahamas. I mean, altogether, the African population, the Garifuna and the Creole, is about 3% of the total population of Honduras, which is 8 million. So Honduras, being, you know, the country that it is not a country that practices democracy or is innovative or is progressive. But we could also say that about the Caribbean and the countries in Latin America. Because as I study the economy of these countries, I don't see a lot of wealthy Black people in the Caribbean and in Latin America as well. So we gotta put things in context. Why? Why is that the case? As Mike alluded to, the Garifuna people in particular, among the indigenous people in Central America, we're at the bottom. But then again, the other indigenous people, they're at the bottom as well. The Maya, they're at the bottom. The Mosquito, the Lenca in Honduras, the Tolupan, they're at the bottom as well. And their lands are being stolen and their leaders are being executed as well. So to me, since we're in the UNIA platform, the UNIA set up a great template on how Africans collectively can move mountains if they work together. And we saw that with Marcus Garvey here in America, in Harlem in particular. I was doing my research of Marcus Garvey. He sold out the Madison Square Garden. So it was like 20,000 people. He was selling stocks to African Americans to buy into the company. He had the Black Star Line, in which the intention of the Black Star Line was for Africans to trade within each other in Central America and the Caribbean, and eventually Africa. In addition to that, Marcus Garvey played a significant role in giving people self-esteem about themselves here in America. And we caught wind to that in Belize because we have a chapter there with TV Ramos. And he had meetings with TV Ramos, Marcus Garvey. We know that Isaiah Mortar of Belize, who is Igbo, by the way, he was the largest contributor to Marcus Garvey. So all these different things we have to understand. Isaiah Mortar from Belize, he was into banana plantation. I don't know how he made his millions, but he was making millions of dollars back in the 20s. So what I think Michael is trying to say, how do we get back to that? Into being economically viable, to change the living conditions of our people. That's what the real conversation should be. How do we get back to that? Because we had the example in St. Vincent with the Garifuna chiefs, Satuye, Toussaint Duvalier, Jean-Baptiste. These guys were millionaires back in the day. How do we get us collectively, first the Garifuna, and then the African American community from a collective perspective? How do we get each other back to that state to become economically viable? Because for argument's sake, you know, we live in a capitalist system and everything revolves around money. As harsh as it may sound, but that's our reality. We cannot get anything done without money. So our liberation is at stake here. What are we doing as Black people to become part of this process? And what the Garifuna people are doing to become part of this process?
All right. Thank you, Brother Pablo. Thank you for that. But I have a question. When you mentioned these chiefs in St. Vincent were millionaires, I mean, I can't imagine them being part of the monetary system, but then you were saying that. So what is it that made them into millionaires?
That information I got from Nancy Gonzalez, Sojourners of the Caribbean. and she wrote a Genesis about our experience. She had access to that information.
I think that's one of the one of the questions Brother Michael might be alluding to when he mentions people just writing stuff. The facts of it, not being bared. So I'll go back to Brother Michael this time to see if he has any comment on what you just said. Brother Michael? And then after that, we will come to questions from the audience, okay? All right.
I would like to say that Brother Pablo, as he said, what do we need to do to free ourselves and get back to a point in time that he thought we were in control of our own reality, I don't understand how Garinagus and Garifuna peoples cannot see themselves as victims of colonialism in their locations and have been totally brainwashed and colonized. It's necessary to find or develop a program of decolonization to invoke ideologies that will assist in decolonizing us as a people. If you look at the reality, when you think of peoples who have been broken down by European slave masters and given gods to worship by these slave masters, where serious scholars will take information, say, oh, my parents had blue eyes and white skin and whatnot, because the Europeanization of their thoughts and reality makes them feel comfortable about themselves, versus real dark Congo black skin, which they would scoff and swear at. But the bottom line is we need a program of decolonization. You are talking about students that have been taught and trained in European thinking. We are talking about students that have been trained and taught in spreading European propaganda to their own people to maintain and hold them backwards and whatnot under control here. But there is approaches to study. I have said that before. Using imperialist designations versus dialectical materialism to discover some truths. We don't really deal with that as issues. Where your studies come from, who made them, for what reason, what purpose, what were they designed to do? Garinagus were given a curriculum in Belize created by the Catholic Church and sent into the rural and said, go and teach this to these Mayas. This is what you teach them. You don't go and teach them about revolution. You don't go and teach them about freedom. You don't go and teach them nothing except ABC 1, 2, 3 and this thing here, the Christian Bible. And we have a bunch of our people, this is what they do. They are lost in Christianity, can't even free themselves if their ass is on fire. Excuse my language. They're pitiful, man, in my sense, in my view. When I look at what I see here, like lambs walking daily to a slaughter to go and worship their master without question, without ever questioning it. People who call themselves educated, the leader of these flocks, they need to be destroyed. I'm serious. Now, I had said earlier, my brother, I am just a simple African revolutionary.
Okay, okay, Brother Michael. We've heard your side. We've heard your point of view. We've also heard Brother Pablo, and I think, and I'm sure that goes for some of the audience, that it was a good what was unexpected debate on the movement, how you should look at where Garifuna should be. I understand from Brother Pablo where he wants, you know, preserving the language, preserving the culture, preserving that historical aspect that's unique towards the folks. And I understand Brother Michael as in a sense saying, you know, we're all Africans no matter how you look at it. And the one drop situation here in the United States, if we look at it carefully, all the other aspects that come together to make Garifuna culture is marginal compared to being African and being and revolution and freeing people in the African sense. Now, I'll leave it there because I'm sure there are folks in the audience who have questions or comments. So if anybody has any question or comment, please
let me say something.
Bring your hand.
Yeah, I would like to say something.
Hold a second, Senghor. You know, Baba Congo has a comment.
Okay. In the Americas, from I would say from Mexico all the way down to Argentina, the condition that Brother Michael Flores says is true. We're at the bottom. Okay, but also we all, in one way or the other, we had land, but every government now is taking away the land that we have, just like how the United States lost a lot of black farmers' land and houses and everything. We're losing. Okay, that's a good thing about the blueprint that Marcus Garvey left, that most people don't join because they think it's too radical, too black, too African. But it's the way that we have to work our way out of, you know, of the condition that we're in. The miseducation that we're getting, Carter G. Woodson talked about. Okay, but we have to develop schools in all these places. The same problem that I'm hearing that you're talking about is the same problem in Chocó, in Colombia, in Esmeralda, in Ecuador, and all those things. We don't have any schools, but we have to make our own schools. But we have to make our own curriculum, and you know, and we have to be, you know, prepare ourselves for the, you know, now people are going all the way to artificial intelligence. So we have a lot of catching up to do, but we also have to be black and think black. But to do that, you have to love black. Yeah, so you have to love yourself. But them is us. Okay. So you know, I mean, so I can say Garifuna is them, but you're us. And we have to love us, and we'll go from there.
Okay, Brother Senghor.
Yeah, I just want to bring greetings to everybody. I want to thank Brother Pablo and Brother Flores, Michael, for the engagement and the conversation. A lot has been mentioned, and I just wanted to let you know that I did just speak to Bilal Sunni Ali, our ambassador of UNIA RC 2020 in Belize, and he apologizes for not being with us. He's engaged in a program right now. And he said he's very tired, but he's engaged in a program himself right now. He just wanted me to extend his apologies for being in this discussion because he has a lot that he could have contributed, particularly when it relates to the universal language, which is music, which is very important because, you know, when we talk about African culture and we talk about our various different subcultures, we have to recognize that many of us have been hoodwinked away from ourselves. And this whole point of Freedom Friday is designed to educate brothers and sisters in bringing us back whole again. And I just wanted to remind everybody that that's what the UNIA is all about. Brother Pablo was absolutely correct. I know Sister Lisa, Brother Zama knows her very well in the work she's doing with the Cameroon. I heard Gullah's mentioned, Gullah Geechee. We are very in tune with Gullah Geechee institutions that are moving to educate Gullah Geechee people that they are African. I think the same thing applies to any subculture. whether or not it's the youth culture that are rolling around, or whether or not it's maroon culture, or whatever you may call it. It is a culture that was established to keep people together. And I want to thank Brother Pablo for sharing what he's shared, because this is a design to educate people who don't even know what Garifuna or the other name that you mentioned is all about. And that's what we are about, is trying to hash back our history to address where we are, where we're going, and to reunite us. So I just wanted to thank both the presenters for the many, many things that they shared. But I also want to say to our brothers and sisters who may be somewhat confused about some of the things that have been said, that it's all relevant. Everything that's being said is relevant. It is important for us to have these kind of forums so that we can learn more. I learned quite a bit more, but I heard Isaiah Morta's name mentioned, and I heard him mentioned as him being a millionaire. Well, actually, a lot of people knew about the banana, but they didn't know about Wrigley gum. Wrigley gum was something that helped Isaiah Morta really advance himself. So for clarity, because some things were mentioned, and that's all I'm doing is just trying to help with some clarity for those people who may be listening, who may never heard of Isaiah Morta, who may not know of his great legacy, or may not know about the Garifuna and the different areas and the connections to the languages in Africa. It's all related. So I want to just close with saying, everybody listening know that we are learning like we want you to learn, that we are all African people. We all come from Africa. And even though we set up in different places and have gotten different names, it still relates back to the African culture. So I don't think anything that's been said tonight is contrary to each other. I think that because we find ourselves in the condition we're in right now, it's a very emotional topic, because we want to get away from this. We want to get back to whole. So I just wanted to share that as the first Assistant President General of UNIA-ACL 2020. And I want to thank Division 330 for doing these type of forums, and stress to all the listeners, just listen and learn and research. And I would hope you give both our brothers an opportunity to share some more reasoning before we close out tonight, because a lot of things that I did not hear that I think need to be shared in terms of how do you find information about what the Garifuna is about? How do you understand about the connection to Africa? So those are just my points. And I just say, thank you, Baba Mosi, for continuing to do the work that you do. And Brother Congo, because both of you brothers come from the southern regions of the northern hemisphere. Y'all, neither one of y'all were born in the United States of snakes. I want to stress that. My brother Panama Stamp, Congo, and my brother Guyana, from Guyana, Baba Mosi. So what we're doing is trying to become more whole again. And so I want to thank Michael for a lot of the things he said, because a lot of stuff he said is where we need to work to get back to. But I also want to stress that I know I've met some Garifuna people who are very conscious that they're African. I want to clarify that. I've met quite a few. Bilal Sunni Ali is one. And there's a lot of others that are very conscious. So all of them may sleep, but we got the same problem in North America, brothers and sisters. I was born and raised in Banneker City, Washington, D.C., and a whole lot of Africans here are fast asleep, and we're striving to wake us all up. So thank y'all again.
All right. Thank you, Baba Senghor. If there's anyone else with a question or comment, you may do so at this time.
Let's get some female energy.
I just wanted to clear up a little info there on Isaiah Morta. Coconuts, he sold copra. All the land was planted with coconuts along the beach, particularly in the north districts of Belize. He was big on selling copra. It was the copra that was the stabilizer of the funds. Of course, including Wrigley, the chicleros and whatnot that he did there. But copra was the thing. And he did leave everything he had, everything, to the UNIA. Now that's champion Pan-Africanists, you know, wanting to see the survival of Africa and African people, donating monies to people he is confident was doing the work for Africa, Honorable Marcos Mosea Garvey. I've said my piece, man.
No, Asante, brother. Thank you for that, brother.
Anyone else would like to say anything? Any questions? Okay.
One thing I know that there's a big Garifuna celebration every year in New York. I think that's the largest group of Garifunas that celebrate anything outside the other countries that they live in.
Yes, Pablo? Okay.
Yes, we do have a couple of celebrations. Well, here in New York in particular, we have a Garifuna Heritage Month. It's been active for several years now. There was a proclamation given to the Garifuna community to celebrate from March 11th to April 12th. It was Garifuna Heritage Month. Every September, around the Central American Independence, September 15th, we usually have a big event in one of the local parks here in which we celebrate Central American independence. And throughout the year, we have different celebrations too within the 5 boroughs. But I want to talk about solutions for us Garifuna people. For me, I lean towards education and studying the experiences of different groups, influential people, and how they lifted their community out of this permanent underclass. So to me, I spent a lot of time reading about the experience of Booker T. Washington. In this particular book, there's 3 books in one: The Negro Problem, Up from Slavery, The Future of the American Negro, and the History of Slavery. These are 3 books in one that I'm currently reading. I also have 2 of Neely Fuller's books. I don't recall the names right now, but I'm currently reading Neely Fuller as well. As far as Francis Cress Welsing, I have a book. I just can't locate it right now. I just purchased this book, Blueprint for Black Power by Dr. Amos Wilson. I also have Powernomics, the National Plan to Empower Black America by Dr. Claude Anderson. So we here at Garifuna Nation, which is an organization that was formed about 10 plus years ago, we plan to educate the community about who they are, their rights, and the history. Because I believe the history is very important to understand, because you got to know why you're doing certain things. We also have an educational arm, with our walls. It's an online university that we are working on getting accreditation in different territories that Garifuna people are in, namely in Central America and in St. Vincent as well. We have a website, garifunanation.org, and GARIU, that's GARIUWW.org. On the GARIU website, we have different classes that teach about customary land rights, Garifuna language. I co-lecture a course on Garifuna critical thinking. Garifuna, we already have a worldview based on our spiritual system, the Ugulendu, and we teach critical thinking from that perspective. We have Professor Egbert Higuino and Professor Ronnie Sambola from Nicaragua that's with me in that class. It's every Monday. If you go to the website, you could sign up, become a member of Garifuna University Without Walls, and then register for those classes. They're all free. We do them through Zoom. So for us, let me go back to Michael's comment in regards to how do we get out of this permanent underclass run. It's through education. Education has to play a major role in it. And I know that's been the catalyst for the African community here in America as well. You're on mute, Baba Mosey.
Oh, you're fading in and out, but okay. Well, okay, I guess you're all right now. All right. Thank you for that information. So we can, is there any more that we can add to that about folks, let's say, Garifuna and other parts of the United States? I'm sure
Yeah.
there might be a lot of them in Atlanta and Florida. What's the communities like in these different areas?
Okay, so let me start with the Bronx. In the South Bronx, we have 500,000 people of Garifuna descent in the South Bronx. These are people that are newly arrived immigrants and the existing persons that have been here. So that number is around the 500,000 ballpark. However, we are also in all the major cities: Atlanta, Miami, New Orleans, Houston, Los Angeles, Chicago, Detroit. So in total, and Seattle, we're in 22 states here in America, but we have a significant amount of people in those cities that I just mentioned.
Oh, okay. So, you do, let's say, get together, or you have conferences. How do you deal with each other in a way that may give us some semblance of unification is possible?
Oh yeah, the unification is already there. Okay. The unification is already there. We just have to structure it and how we're going to move forward, because our world is changing. The world is changing, it's evolving. We have to sort of evolve with the world, but yet keep our core principles intact. And from my perspective,
I got one question that was mailed phone to me. All the websites and everything that you do, is it mostly in English or in Garifuna?
It's mostly in English.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, I lost my train of thoughts when you. But anyway, let's see. You just mentioned 500,000 in the Bronx, and if you add all those other people around, at least 1 million, you think, of Garifuna here in the U.S.
Yes, worldwide.
What impact, economic impact, do they have with Garifuna in Central America?
Well, there's one community in particular in Honduras in which I got the data through remittances. There's one community in Honduras that sends on average about $1 million a month to Honduras. And remember, we have 48 communities in Honduras. So we're a very, economically impactful community. I would say more so than the other communities in Honduras. I'll go even further by saying that without the Garifuna dollar or the remittances, the economy of Honduras will collapse.
Well, that's saying a lot. I mean, is that recognizable politically?
No, unfortunately, it isn't. It isn't. Not yet. We're not a politically sophisticated community just yet.
Okay. Yeah, somebody got elected.
Actually, we have 10 congressmen, 10 Garifuna congressmen in Congress right now.
Out of how much?
Well, the population in Honduras is I would say, give or take 100,000.
No, but how big is your Senate or your legislature?
I'm not certain. I will have to look that up. But this is the first time that that's been the case in Honduras, that we have all these Congress people in these influential seats.
Well, we can say the dollar is having an impact. Somebody must be paying attention. Well, that's good to know.
Right.
That's good to know because you know, the news we get all the time is that they're powerless, and that nothing seems to be going their way politically, and they're marginalized on the coast, and land is you know, especially the coast where they have beaches, you know, land is being stolen from them, and I say stolen because it's by some financial crookedness. There might be people are losing their land. So I'm hoping that politically that this can be resolved. But of course, I'm not asking you to answer that question. I'm just saying that's just my point. You know, Honduras has is that English popular? Is that Honduras? Livingston is the name of the place. Is it Honduras or Guatemala? Is the place called Livingston?
That's the yes, that's the Garifuna community in Guatemala, Livingston, also known in Garifuna as La Buga. And let me touch on Guatemala for a little bit.
Yes,
let me touch on Guatemala for a little bit, because Guatemala is interesting because from my research, it was founded by a Haitian general, Marco Sanchez Diaz.
Guatemala as a country, is that what you said? Or the guy, Livingston?
Yes.
Livingston was
Livingston is the first settlement in Guatemala.
Okay. Okay. But and that's an English-speaking area, isn't it? Or is it? Oh, you can say Garifuna,
there are Creole.
Right?
Yes, there's both. There's Creole and Garifuna people that live in that area, to my understanding. Definitely, the Puerto Barrios is another area close in which Garifuna and Creole.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. We didn't hear too much of what you just said because you were fading. You had faded out.
Okay, the Garifuna and Creole people live in two areas in Guatemala, in Livingston and Puerto Barrios.
Okay. You did mention earlier as well the people of Nicaragua as an autonomous area. Are they part of this population in the Bronx? I mean, people from that area? Yeah, okay.
No, the majority of the Garifuna people that are in the Bronx are from Honduras.
Okay. All right. Well, we seem to be having a little problem with the audio when it comes to what you're saying. But anyway, thanks for that. We've, you know, we've gone. What time is it? Yeah, we did want to have a good 90-minute discussion. We've had that. and it sounds like, you know, there's a lot more that can be said. But, you know, again, you know, we appreciate what you, Brother Pablo, and you, Brother Michael, have shared with us. And hopefully this conversation will continue at some other point. But I would like to wish the people, the Garifuna, Garinagu people, well in their endeavors to progress culturally. And apparently you mentioned the Garifuna Nation, the Garinagu Nation. It seems that you have your ambition is to bring to the world what you are all about at some point. And hopefully that will come true in the sense of how we look at it in the UNIA, that you'll be part and parcel of that one family of African people or African descendant people. And we may hear again, because we know, especially Honduras, we know that we've had UNIA groups in those areas. And we hope we can start that again. You know, what myself and Baba Congo has been trying to do. Baba Congo speaks Spanish. He's of Panamanian origin. I shouldn't say origin. He was born in Panama, and he is Hispanic in that sense. But we have a concern about the people in Latin America, African people in Latin America, and the education, the awareness of who they are, and the fact that, like, they're the underclass, so to speak, in the worst sense of the word. You know, I myself have been to Colombia, and I've witnessed that, but I've also witnessed the Palenque people and their pride and everything else. Just as you are mentioning the Garifuna, their pride, they have a language, and they're using that language to educate their children. They've got the schools, and they're teaching in the language. So that's, you know, I can see where they're also being, they're also projecting themselves to the world, because they have annual, I think, what they call drum festivals. And you know, you can go on the YouTube and see, just like with Garifuna, the music they play, and they're proud of their history. They're proud of their culture. So I have no doubt that the Garifuna people will be at the point, or are at the point, where they are just as proud of their culture, language, and other people. But also, I would like to say that as a member of the UNIA, part of the UNIA government, I would like to see them participating more, with UNIA. I would like to see that the Africanity come out more. I'm not saying it's not there. I'm just saying I would like to see it in a stronger position, so that we can not only be united with people of the Garifunagu, but we united with African people the world over, as you part and parcel of that history of Africans in the diaspora. So I think if anybody has any question or any last words, you can do that now before we close. And if not, again, thank you very much. Thank you, Brother Pablo and Michael again. And Brother Heru, I think we can now, what song would you like, do you think would be appropriate at this point, Brother Pablo? Because we do have which one on that list would be good for you, or good for us to close?
So one of the, since we're, you know, in this fight to preserving our culture, one of the songs that speak to me is by Brother Andy Palacio. It's called Amen No Gua.
That's not the first one we played.
And it talks
right?
about our. Say that again?
That's not the first song we played, was it? Is it the same person?
No, the first one you played was called Watina.
Okay.
So this particular song that you did, it talks about us preserving our language, our culture. He talks about who's going to be baking our head, who's going to practice in our spiritual system. And he's basically talking about us being our culture is unique and special and to continue practicing it.
And that's Yankano, you said?
No, Amen Agua by Andy Palacio.
Is that on the list?
Yeah, I believe I see it. Yes, it is. I should have sent that song on. It should be on the list. Yes.
What I mean, if you I'm not sure. I don't see that name here. We have.
Yeah, I sent you the link. Without the name,
But Brother Haru, can you let him share the screen and play that song? If you don't, because we may not have it.
What is the spelling of the song? The title, how you spell it?
It's AMUNEGU.
Okay, let me look for it. You continue talking. Let me go find it then.
Okay.
I can send you the link. I can send you the link on the chat.
Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
There we go.
And Heru for your technical work.
As usual. Brother Heru is our very reliable technical person. You know, he has helped a lot in other ways. You know, he's a photographer, he's a scientist. That's Watino, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing, Brother Heru. It's down to, it's further down. There was a list that came up. Although I do like that one. That's a pretty lively one.
Yeah, that's the song.
That's the song?
Yes, it is.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, I think, the first one we played. Maybe you weren't on yet when we played that.
Oh, okay.
Okay, brother. Uh-oh. All right. Well, you know, everyone, you know, we've really appreciate what was, you know, presented to us this evening. One of the things that we've tried to do over a period of time is to connect the African diaspora with what the UNIA is all about. We're coming up, our next forum will be in October. That we're contemplating to change what but because of the Haitian situation, we may have a forum on Haiti and the issues presently, especially dealing with immigration and the question of them on the Mexican border, which is like many other people, Africans. We know we have Garifuna there. We know, you know, but we're hearing much of the news mentioning Haitians. So we may deal with that in October. And what we have coming up in November will be about the people in West Papua. People of West Papua, of course, is is a Pacific island. The Papuan people are of African descent, and they have been there for thousands of years. And they're having an issue with the Indonesians, where the Indonesian military invaded and they occupy that country, which is half of the island of Papua. And, you know, those people are struggling to free themselves. So, and you may, if you have no idea of what it's all about, you can check out on Facebook page, Free US Papua, and you'll get some idea of what we're talking about. We in the UNIA want to connect all African people. We want to ensure that all African people are free, and we are working towards unity in purpose. And so this is very significant for us, because the people in Papua, they know that they have African connections, and they don't shy away from that. So and you know, although in our education, why, you know, much has been said about who they are, but not with their connection to Africa. And we have an obligation to include them among the forces of African people in the diaspora. And we're hoping that the African continent, the AU, and will recognize that as well. The people in the Pacific, you know, African people in the Pacific, they recognize that where they're from. They recognize their origin, I should say, and they need to be part of the African family. We recognize as such by the continental Africans. So we know those who are, you know, objective, who are wise, who are paying attention to what's happening in the world. You know, they do have an idea that these people are there, and some people do mention it in my correspondence with people on the continent, but it needs to be projected to a greater length. So we're going to have that going on in November. So what happened? Okay, Abaheru, you've lost the song. We can put it forward now. Okay. Goodbye, everyone. Good night. Thank you all for being on. It's a beautiful song. I couldn't be talking over it. Please enjoy.
Garifuna san anyuga wabute amunyego. Garifuna san ayanuha Garifuna numa amunyego. Garifuna san aruma hanuma o amunyego. Garifuna san adigraha wawu amunyege. Julu halidalu la reida ho. Julu halidalu la rufuda ho. Julu halidalu la reida ho. Bedi wanyali kumukubaye. Garifuna san anyuga wabute amunyega. Garifuna san ayanuha Garifuna numa amunyega. Garifuna san aruma numa o amunyega. Garifuna san adugraha wa o.